Senator Wahab.
Thank you. As the current chair of housing, I would like to say that I rise in opposition to SB79. And I do just want to highlight, I have great respect for the author and his attempts to address our housing crisis. But as I've spoken many times on the floor in this session, housing is a very nuanced conversation to have. And I think that what we are missing here largely is the requirements that need to be in place to ensure that developers do right by the society that we live in and the society we want to create. And right now, the trend of housing, and I've been very critical, and oftentimes it falls on deaf ears, but there is zero ownership requirement here. So when we are talking about housing, what type of housing are we building? Are we building ownership opportunities? Not necessarily, no requirement. When we talk about affordability, there are concerns there, as well as a number of other concerns I do want to highlight. I also want to highlight for the larger public that many of the conversations happening with individual members is to carve out their area. So we can have a statewide policy, but carve out my area. I don't want it to touch my area. That is what we've been hearing over and over and over on the floor. And so the trend of housing policies on the state level is to enact broad policies that have ignored the nuances of our communities. California has 58 counties and 482 incorporated cities, towns, and villages with varying climate, topographies, and needs. Those climate differences and varying lands impact what we build, how we build, and who we build for. Removing all local control at the state level when our state is so diverse means we are not building for the people in our diverse communities. Additionally, when we erase the nuances, we don't get the outcomes we are seeking from these policies. If we do not put a target of this is our goal and requirement, we will not see those targets achieved. The senator from San Francisco says that this will increase transit ridership. But when we are overbuilding market rate luxury housing, the people living in those units are not going to be transit riders. The higher the income level, the less likely you are to ride public transit, and that is a data point in a paper the author shared with my housing committee staff. There is also no minimum density required in this bill whatsoever, which means we could end up with single-family homes around these transit lines, which defeats the author's intent. We could potentially create townhomes, which developers love, and we could create luxury rentals across the coast, in particular where housing is prioritized. It's not necessarily inland California. It is not in communities of color. It is not in areas that we have been saying, please build. But it's in areas where when we're talking about real estate, it's location, location, location. And what can drive the profit margins for these developers and potentially landlords, because again, no ownership requirements. All other laws this legislature has passed on expediting housing has included higher affordability requirements than in this bill, labor standards that are not in this bill, and a combination of other benefits to balance the benefits developers receive. Again, I've said that this is a complete handout to developers with no real give up from the developers to the communities that they're building in. This bill has none of that. When the author keeps citing SB 423, there is no requirement to use the SB 423 route, which means this bill has no labor standards, tenant protections, or any other trade-off we usually require to protect our communities, especially when we're talking about mass development. SB 79 also applies to more sites and gives better benefits to a developer with no public benefit requirement. Other bills specifically call out that a developer cannot build on a site in which a tenant has resided in the last 10 years, including bills by the author. This ensures a developer cannot target sites with vulnerable populations. I mentioned in a previous bill how we have a growing homeless population. We have a population that cannot support the rising rents. This ensures a developer, there's, again, no such requirement in SB79. And while this bill says there is a tenant relocation, there is no enforcement to ensure tenants get what they are owed. I want to highlight that I do deeply disagree with this bill, and I think that the author is working incredibly hard to address some of the concerns. Not all of my concerns, but some of the concerns. And I don't believe that this will solve the crisis if we are not making meaningful inroads on affordability. I want to highlight that also, as much as we talk about supply and demand, all the data points say that the trajectory we're going, even if we were to increase it, we're going to see the supply and demand actually address our housing concerns in 2 generations. So not today, not tomorrow, in 2 generations. We cannot wait for the concept of let's just build more. And I agree with the efforts that this senator has been working on, as well as many of the other provisions when we are looking to reform the laws that we've had on the books for 30+ years, 10, 15 years, constantly, improving efficiencies and much more. But I do not believe that this bill addresses all of our concerns that we have stated, from affordability, tenants, rents, ownership, and the safeguards that we as policymakers are required to put in place to protect the most vulnerable people that cannot sit in this room. So I respectfully ask for a no vote with deep respect for the author. Thank you.